Good afternoon and welcome to the October 13th regular meeting of the City of Glendale Commission on the Status of Women. If we could have roll call, please.
Vice Chair Burns.
Present.
Commissioner Kajayan.
Present.
Commissioner Lal. Present. Ex officio Mirsahanian is absent. Ex officio Sahakian.
Present.
Chair Miller.
Present. Thank you, Ms. Hidalgo. Next item on the agenda, please.
1A, report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for the October 13, 2014 meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside of City Hall on or before October 10, 2014. Item 2, introductions and presentations. At A, Domestic Violence Awareness, Sergeant York Saruda, Glendale Police Department.
And before we have our police department join us, if I could just take an opportunity to announce our new commissioner who is with us, that we are very pleased to have up on the dais. Her name is Sarojini Lal, and she has quite a background in bio, so we're very pleased to have her join us up here. She's lived in Glendale since 2001. She's a native of Baltimore, Maryland. Her concern of empowerment of girls and women goes back to her childhood years. She studied at a girls' preparatory school, founded in 1885 by a redoubtable group of Baltimore women who were determined that girls should be educated on par with boys. She went on to graduate from Baltimore's Public Conservatory High School, the Baltimore School for the Arts, and then enrolled at Smith College, where she completed her BA in English. From there, she went on to get a master's degree in contemporary English studies from Goldsmith College at the University of London. She's currently working in public affairs and communication. She's going to bring a wealth of knowledge to this particular commission in those areas, and she is a Glendale resident with 2 young daughters of her own. Welcome. And would you like to, could you turn your mic? And
thank you very much.
Like to add anything?
I would, if you don't mind, I'd just like to make some remarks, if that's okay. First, I want to thank my fellow commissioners and the commission president for this very warm welcome. I'm very humbled to have the opportunity to serve my community through my work on this commission, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you for the betterment of our community, and specifically to address the status of women and girls in Glendale. And I'd like to thank Councilmember Paula Devine for giving me this opportunity to serve on the commission. I particularly want to applaud the work of the current and past commissioners, especially for their focus on violence against women. This is a very important issue, and the work of the commission to direct attention to this issue, sadly, as we've discovered, is still very relevant and timely, even up to today, as on a national level, we are struggling as a nation to adequately recognize the seriousness of this issue. Clearly, we have a lot of work to do. And I hope that we will continue to pursue compassion and understanding and justice for the victims of domestic and sexual violence, and I'm very grateful to the past commissioners whose work I've been reading about for their commitment to domestic violence. I've been giving a lot of thought prior to joining the commission to the role that the commission plays now and can play in the future for our city. As Commissioner Miller just mentioned in her introduction, there is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the representation and recognition or lack of recognition of professional women in society and in the media. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to spend a minute talking about this. For the last several years, I've been following the work of the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media. The institute was founded several years ago by Gina Davis as she was raising her young daughter, and in response to the highly distorted gender representation that she witnessed in children's entertainment, specifically films for young children. Last week, I attended a symposium in Los Angeles hosted by the Institute, where Dr. Stacy Smith of the USC Annenberg School for Communication presented her groundbreaking research on the representation of women and girls in the top 11 film-producing countries, specifically including the United States. The study revealed the full extent of the chronic imbalance in the number of women and girls depicted in films, and it was just very surprising to see that in all of these films that they surveyed from 11 different countries, the ratio of male to female characters was 2.24 to 1. So for every female character, there were 2.24 male characters. And interestingly, in the crowd scenes that they looked at, only 17% of the representations of the characters were female. So if you had a crowd scene with a lot of people in it, only 17% of those people would be female. So I bring up this issue because it's very important to me personally that girls and women have girls and women that they can look at in the imaginary world that reflect their dreams and aspirations for the future. So this is an issue that's very important to me personally, and I'm just very grateful to be here, to be representing girls and women, and hopefully working with all of you to address issues like this and many others that come to our attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are very happy to have you here. We're very happy to be on our way to a full commission. We really appreciate your background. I am getting some notice from the other commissioners that they're very eager to welcome you as well, so I'm going to turn it over to them.
I would like to welcome and congratulate Commissioner Sarojini on your appointment to the City of Glendale Commission on the Status of Women. All of us together, I guess, we can make the difference in the lives of the women in our community. With your experience that I heard and experience, Commissioner Denise and Linda, I guess all of us together, we can help and solve issues, women in Glendale. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, and we'll save the rest of our welcomes as we move into comments. Thank you again, and we are going to go back into our agenda and to welcome our speaker who is here with us tonight. Ms. Hidalgo, or Ms. Alexanian, could you give the introduction?
Good evening, Chair Miller, Commissioners. Just want to do a brief introduction for Sergeant Saruda. He's got over 20 years of experience in law enforcement in various divisions of the police department, and he's currently the supervisor of the assaults detail in the Crimes Against Persons section of the Detective Bureau for the City of Glendale. There are 5 detectives assigned to his section, and they handle all sexual assaults, sex crimes, domestic violence cases, child abuse, child molestation, and similar cases. October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, he's here with us today to speak on the topic. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Sergeant Saruda.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Chair Miller and the commissioners and the city staff for having me here tonight and for the assistance that you've rendered to the police department and how it greatly affects how I do my job to help the community. As was stated, I have 5 detectives assigned to me, and I'd just like to give you a quick rundown on the police response on the domestic violence type situation. All of our patrol officers, when they respond to domestic violence, obviously, domestic violence is considered and categorized by the chief of police as a high priority call. So this is not, the days when they would say, okay, we'll get to that when we get to it. It's a high priority. Oftentimes at Code 3, the lights and siren response to the scene, officers' primary goal is to ensure the safety of people as promptly as possible, preservation of life. And then our officers are getting ongoing training in understanding the complexities and nuances of domestic violence and understanding the cycles that go along where a couple might have at times a positive relationship and at times a volatile relationship. And that cycle causes oftentimes a change in demeanor from the moment we get on scene. The fighting that happened moments ago might stop. And it might be a little hard, so we try and do a very thorough job in separating the parties, trying to get to the bottom of what happened, trying to ensure that the victim doesn't feel the focus. We don't want to re-victimize the victim in these types of things. So there's a great understanding. We address any and all court orders that may be in play. We are not an isolated, California is the center of the world. If we have a domestic situation where maybe somebody has come to here to be with family members, to be away, there's a restraining order in another state, it's our policy to, if it is a if the elements are in that restraining order that the person might have from another state appear to have gone before a legitimate judicial body in the United States courts or military courts, we will enforce that restraining order. We will take those actions, whether it's been duly notarized or served or brought before a California court or not. If it appears valid in the interests of public safety, we will enforce those court orders. Domestic violence that falls into the misdemeanor category where there's not a tremendous injury is one of the sections that law enforcement can make an arrest for a misdemeanor violation not committed in our presence. So we will do those. We do not cite out people who release them on a citation, promise to appear on their own recognizance. On domestic violence, felony or misdemeanor, we do not release them on domestic violence restraining orders. Those are typically misdemeanors. There's another restraining order, like if you just go and get a typical restraining order, like keep your neighbor off your property. That's a misdemeanor, and sometimes those can get cited out. But domestic violence ones we do not. We work hand in hand with the YWCA to follow up from the time of conflict. Sometimes we need to separate the people. Sometimes in all the situations, the suspect is not in custody. It's not safe for the victim to remain at home. And so we work hand in hand with the YWCA, who's our primary, here in Glendale, is our primary assistant in finding shelter, counseling, referrals for legal assistance, that type of thing. Our patrol officers try and always take pictures of any of the scene, of any potential injuries, try and document what's happened by use of the digital audio recorders that all of the Glendale police officers have been issued. And we also give the victims several documents. We give them domestic violence referral material that's typically supplied to us by the YWCA, which gives them a whole litany of legal assistance, the shelter assistance, the counseling, the ongoing medical, all the things of life that are going to be hard if you're now in a conflict with your significant other. We also give them paperwork called the Vine pamphlet, which is a process. So if we make an arrest or the suspect is arrested later, the victim can log on to the county sheriff's department and then have a way of being automatically notified of any change in custody status. So if the person's released, then they can implement their safety plan. So there are a number of things that we do. At the Detective Bureau level, where my officers work, we get the cases in. We try and immediately contact the victim, flush out any other information we need to get. Maybe we might need to follow up with getting medical records, and we might need to get a medical record release from the victim. We try and make sure that they understand the process. Since we deal with the court side more in the investigation, sometimes we're better apt at be able to explain that process to the victim and also give them a name of a person that's got that case, because that's oftentimes much more empowering because people understand, who do I contact if I have a problem? Who do I call? Because calling 911, yeah, you get the police out there, but sometimes it's hard to make that phone call, on a loved one when you're not in that immediate crisis. Our officer, my detectives, when we file cases, we also file the cases to the DA's office with color photos, preferably color, because the machinery is working, of photos taken at the scene or subsequent photos taken by our crime lab at the directions of the detectives on the case, so that when the district attorney's office gets the case and reviewing the case, they can get more of the impact of what happened by having the photos. We also supply the audio logs from the 911 call to the officer's digital audio recorder. So again, the district attorney's office has a sense of the conflict, and by the time you get to court, everybody's wearing a suit or a dress and looking appropriate, and the chaos of the moment has been so much sterilized. So we try and present the case so that the filing DA really has a sense of what happened at that time. We also give them a copy of Megan's Law, which empowers the victim and lets them know what their kind of a little more about what their rights are and what happens through the legal process, so that they have a right to come to speak to the district attorney's office and have some input as to potential settlements and things like that. So there's a whole list of things that our patrol officers give to the victims that we follow up with. In terms of several years ago, this commission gave the police department, I believe it was $2,500 for the police department to use when or if the situation arises where we have victims who need placement in a shelter in off hours. Oftentimes with domestic violence situations, we will get the victim where literally all they might have is maybe their kids and the clothes on their back. No cell phone, no wallet, sometimes no shoes, sometimes even less. And so being able to say, okay, we'll go get to a hotel or catch a bus and go see family it's not possible. And in off hours, that can be very hard to place people. We have, I've invited Karina Gonzalez from the YWCA, who's one of my primary go-to people when we have any issues. And we've been very fortunate that the YWCA has been able to place people in their shelters or corresponding shelters. But we at the police department have the funds that this commission gave, and we'll use that when the shelters are full. And there have been a number of times when the shelters have been full, and in having some discussions with Karina, we've actually found there are probably some situations recently where we probably should have and could have used our fund, but they've actually been so good about finding placement, they haven't called me, and we haven't made that connection. But she and I are definitely now dialed in, so we can make sure that we can do the very best for the people that we serve and come in contact with, so we can use those funds. To give you some numbers, real quick before I go to the PowerPoint, of that fund of $2,500, we've been very frugal and in using it very judiciously, and I still have $1,924.41 if you want the exact number of that $2,500. We haven't had to use much in the last 2 years because the YWCA has actually placed everybody in the last 2 years. It was used the 2 years before that. So it is a great resource to have, and to know that that's something to follow up on. Recently, actually, I verified with some of the hotels that we use to make sure that current management is still involved in it. And that day, I got a call from the YWCA saying, "Hey, we might need to use that today." You know, it's kind of just interesting on timing. Just to give you some numbers on domestic violence in general before I relinquish the mic here, I'd like to go to the PowerPoint if I could. Oh, I've got it here. That's right. Okay. I wanted to give you some idea of where we stand with domestic violence numbers. So we pulled up. These numbers are generated from the crime reports that the police department must submit to the state and federal government. It's our Uniform Crime Reporting Index. So in terms of domestic violence stuff, you can see the primary number that makes the most sense here is the top line. You can see 2004 to 2013, and then below that, the total calls. These are the domestic violence crimes that were reported to the state and to the federal government. So you can see, on an average, we go about in the low 300s, 320s, 315. We had an unusual year in 2010. It spiked up to 523. As a caveat, I came to the unit in 2011 and knocked that right down. No, we're not sure exactly how the stats played out. Unfortunately, that was a bad year. But you can see we are holding, by and large, around 300. Now, don't be misled by 300 cases in the year. It's like one a day. Realistically, though, the numbers of domestic violence incidents is tremendously higher because we take police reports on any domestic conflict that draws police attention. By our policy, we're going to take a police report, and we have to title it like a DV disturbance. So there might not be a crime. There might not be an assault that has occurred in there, but because there's a domestic, it's a domestic situation, we want to document it so that if we end up in a situation where we do have domestic violence, a crime occurs, we can show the pattern of behavior. This has been escalating here, so that a lot of times the victims won't come forward and say, I want to have my significant other person arrested, or my significant should be arrested. It usually, unfortunately, takes them some time before they're going to take away the person's liberty that they love, that might be the parent of their child. So it's very difficult. So we don't want to come out and say, okay, you guys, there's no problem, you guys are fine, nobody's alleging any crime, and we leave. We document it. We come out there, there's a domestic situation, we document it, so that if we have to go back and say it, and then the victim comes to us later on and says, well, those other 3 times you came out, there was stuff going on, and I was afraid, I didn't want to say anything. We can then use that historical data, because we already have it well documented, that we came out here, the officer's observations. It could be that they say, oh, we were just having an argument, and I put my foot through the TV. That's a community property issue. It's not necessarily violence triggered towards the other. It is, in my opinion, emotional violence that's going on, and it's definitely not healthy for the children. And so that's why we, as a police department, we document those things. So but these are the crimes so this is not DV disturbance. These numbers here, these are the crimes where an actual crime of the assault actually occurred. In our police reports, all the numbers below, we categorize if there was a weapon used and what type. When it says not reported, that's where we said, well, unknown or nothing. We didn't leave the box. We were pretty thorough in our police reports, so we didn't leave any boxes unchecked, and so that's why you have that zeros along the bottom. Okay, here's a number. We're giving you a number of range of victims and their gender. This number is also a little bit skewed, because if there's a domestic violence crime and one party in the couple assaults the significant other, and say a sister or a child comes over and tries to intervene and protect the person being abused, and that person gets smacked and hit, that person becomes another victim. So you might have a male aggressor attacking the female mom, and the son comes forward, and so now you're going to have a female victim and a male victim, and the computers, we just tally the victims in the stats thing. So the next slide gives you another little bit, might help out a little bit. 7 out of 10 victims are female, 2 out of 10 victims are males. This next line there, that in 2014 our victims, or half of our victims were between 20 and 52, over half. When I read every police report that comes through to the desk before I assign it, and there are a huge range of ages on our victims. And these are some of the numbers that our stat people notice, is that we have this peak between July and September. And a lot of that could possibly be during that summertime. The kids are through with school. Parents would say, okay, I've had a safety plan in place. I'm going to make that change and make that move, and so now I'm going to make this police report, so now I have some time to deal with the kids. But that's a hypothesis. We don't have factual, solid numbers on what that, but that seems to be the type of trend, and when people are coming forward and talking to us. This is the Victims' Bill of Rights. It's available online. You can see that anytime. I just wanted to give you an idea of this is a small pamphlet we can hand out to our victims. This is the Vine form. This is the handout we give to our victims and potential victims. On DV disturbances that I mentioned earlier, that we don't have a crime, we give out this material so that maybe if they read it, when they're calmer, when they realize, you know what, I need to really say the whole thing. And a lot of times when we've taken these DV disturbance reports and then we've gone out, we in the Detective Bureau have gotten calls. The officers were here last night. I told them, my significant other did not assault me. Well, that's not true. They actually did such and such. And it's great that we have that police report that documents that, and now we'll take a supplemental report and then we'll change the classification on that report from a DV disturbance to an assault. Oops. Wrong button, sorry. This is the form we get from the YWCA, and again, it talks, we got the shelter, 24-hour assistance to the shelter, legal services, CalWorks, so how they might have to get back in the job force, so they need how do you do that? So luckily, we have the YWCA as a great resource here in the city. Counseling, they have, and then their education programs that they'll run through. This form is a kind of a triplicate form and is in English, Armenian, and Spanish. We also have a separate form because you can only put so many languages on one form. I believe in Korean, and I think I've looked at the Korean one lately. I think there's another language on the back of the Korean one. So we put them out in many languages. We also, at the patrol level, we will try and get emergency protective orders. Emergency protective orders are a way for us to create basically a temporary restraining order that's good for 5 days from the incident, so that if it happens at nighttime, or if it happens on a weekend, and you can't get to court to get a restraining order, this allows police officers to call up a commissioner 24 hours a day, or no, excuse me, on the off hours, and get a restraining order for the victim. During the court hours, we need to go get a regular restraining order from the I mentioned a safety plan. These are some of the things that we'll hand out so that if you're trying to make that decision, are you going to make that plan, are you going to make that separation, are you going to make that significant change in your life, these are some of the things that we want people to talk about. Get your passports, get your ID, get secondary car keys, or all the things that you might need. One of the things we tell with victims and domestic violence, and the YWCA does the same thing as well, is when they check into a shelter, or if they're going to leave and they're going to go to a friend's house, and modern technology is great. Who here could not go 5 minutes without having your cell phone on you? The problem is your cell phone could also be your worst nightmare, because there's so many different apps of ways that people can use to track your phone, or they can put spyware on your phone so they can be reading your text messages. So we tell people, if you're going to split, don't just turn your phone off, don't just turn it on silent, don't just not return your abuser's calls. You need to turn that thing off. You need to, or take the battery. I believe at the Y you actually have to take the battery out. But there are a number of things. So Facebook, all these social media things that we really can't seem to live without. Those are dead giveaways to help the abuser track you. You take a picture with your phone, and you're at the beach. You take a picture of your phone with your kids, and there's a geo-tracking device on that picture that goes up. And so if you have an iPhone, go to your photos, and then go. And you can look at places, and you can see every place exactly where you took that picture. And I pulled it up, and I would look at my kids and say, "Hey, they're in their back bedroom, which is on the northeast side of the house." I mean, it's that specific. So those are some of the things that we talk about, and how we do the investigation, how we interact with the folks, and kind of in a very rushed nutshell, that's kind of what we do.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission?
I was just wondering if you could speak briefly to the various agencies that are involved in responding to these incidents. Obviously, the Glendale Police is the first port of call, but you also have nonprofits that you work with. Are there also county agencies that get involved that you have to liaise with, or what is the matrix of response that, in addition to the police?
Yeah, thank you. Great point. Obviously, the YWCA helps us as a resource for the folks, and there are a ton of other resources that are out there in terms of the follow-up in rendering assistance to the victim. And if they are full, or if there's other resources that they actually refer people to other sources for the aftercare, to put it one way. If there are children involved, where children are present during a DV disturbance, LA County is pretty, I'm sorry, aggressive, but pretty, I think, in tune with domestic violence. That domestic violence doesn't always get reported as domestic violence, that it takes a while, and that's why we're taking these DV disturbance type reports. If there isn't a conflict between parents, or a parent and the new significant other, however, and there are kids present, we cross-report to we call DCSF and make a cross-report so that DCSF can address the family issues, the health issues of raising a child in that environment. Sometimes people don't want to talk to the police. We show up, we're in uniform, badge, gun. There's some people have a positive impact assumption of police, and some people have a negative one. So sometimes having that other impact of having that other resource of having the DCSF, sometimes they'll go in and contact the family, and they have their own mandates of what they have to do in terms of talking to the kids, talking to the parents, making sure the parents are taking steps to properly have a household that's appropriate for raising a child in there. Sometimes they'll find out information, and because we have this system called the EastCard data system, which is another system that I monitor for the police department. If you witnessed child abuse or what you thought was child abuse and you called the child abuse hotline, it goes to a database. They type up your statement. You're anonymous as a reporter, unless it's me, like I'm a mandated reporter as a police officer. That generates a dual report that goes off to DCSF. The exact report gets faxed or delivered to the appropriate law enforcement agency wherever it is. I've gotten DCSF referrals from Orange County and from San Bernardino County. We're not even connected through the same county, but it gets disseminated. It's a pretty good system. I'm assuming across the United States, but everywhere I've had to deal with in Los Angeles for sure. And so then the police respond, and if we haven't responded first, if we didn't generate it, if it came from a call to the hotline, the police respond and investigate, obviously, the welfare of people, the safety issue, and also a crime. DCSF responds, and they're really looking after the current and future welfare of the children in that household. And in that database, I always put in there's a police report taken, crime suspected, no crime suspected, pending, meaning we haven't been able to find the people yet. I put in the detective's name, who I assigned the case to, and their phone number. I can see the DCSF social worker who took the 800 call and who the case was assigned to, and I can see on the computer a brief synopsis of where their status is, what their case status is on DCSF side. And that website is, or that database, is run through the LA County DA's office.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair Miller, I have a question.
Commissioner?
First of all, thank you very much for this great information, and it's useful. I have a question, just clarification. You mentioned something about do not post victims' picture on the Facebook. That what you mentioned something?
Well, I was just talking about the data, the technology that we all have. I mean, you have an iPhone?
Yes.
Okay, so the photo that you take with your iPhone, it has a geo-mapping link embedded in it. You can't see it. It's in there. There's an option in your phone. We can talk after this. I can show you how to turn it off.
Okay.
But every photo you take on your phone, and many new cameras today, have a GPS tag system embedded in the photograph. So that if you turn it on, if you have it turned on, you're broadcasting your location. So you're traveling across Italy. So yeah, we see the pictures of where you were in Italy, and we see exactly where you were standing in Italy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair Miller.
Also, just a couple of things in conclusion. The commission we've worked long with the Glendale Police Department. We very much appreciate all that you do. We've also had a great partnership with the YWCA, and we're so appreciative of them taking the lead on this domestic violence platform for women and girls. We have a resource guide as well, and I know that the YWCA has that. This commission's worked hard, and it's 2 pages, and it actually answers the question, one part of the question that you were asking in terms of some of the things that are available in this community. So we can also make sure that that is available at the Glendale Police Department if so interested. And then I also just wanted to take this opportunity in reflection so that our audience knows we've had you be our speaker this month because the platform is domestic violence, and there are a number of events that are taking place in October. So purple is the color of domestic violence. Many of us are wearing purple. We're also wearing pink because it's raising breast cancer awareness as well. So we thank you for joining in and being our speaker during this month on those topics.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and I hope I've addressed all your questions. And thank you for the fund, and we will continue to use it judiciously. It is a valuable resource for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, please.
Item 3, oral comment. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or discussion. Staff may refer the matter to the proper department for investigation and report.
Okay, and I have one card for a speaker, Sharon Weissman.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I'm Sharon Weissman from far north Glendale, and I'm here to wish my former colleagues the best as you resume meeting after several months. And I very much enjoyed the 10 months I was on the commission, and especially the three and 2 student members welcomed me so graciously, and I really enjoyed working with you. Actually, that's one of the best things is getting to know you and Rima and Commissioner Mirzahakian. I'm sorry Avanthi is not here. I do have to say, if you're not aware, her younger sister is now on the Crescenta Valley Youth Council that works with the Crescenta Valley Town Council advising Supervisor Antonovich in the unincorporated La Crescenta Montrose. So there's another family member that's serving the community already. And thank the staff, Teresa Alexanian, Iris, very, very helpful. And Jess, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the commission evolves. I understand later this evening we'll hear some changes. And I think it's also very beneficial that a former member is now on City Council with Paula Devine. So the issues that are dear to the hearts of the Commission will have a good spokesperson on the City Council moving forward. And I look forward to working with you in the future, and welcome, Commissioner Lal. Your resume is amazing, and I'm sure you'll do very well and complement the rest of the very hardworking, capable women here and the gentlemen who work with them. And I look forward to seeing you at events going forward. Thank you.
Former Commissioner Weissman, don't go away yet. Just to let you know, and we will have you back in January as we're reorganizing. We will have you back at our January meeting. We will thank you, and we have plaques and all of those things that we're going to do. I will just thank you at this time. I hadn't met you before you were appointed to the commission, and unlike many of these ladies who had met you, and it was a pleasure to serve next to you, although we came at issues from very different angles. I think that's what makes the world ripe and fruitful, and your voice will definitely be missed on this commission. So best of good wishes to you. Come back in January for your parting gifts.
Thank you. No need for gifts, but thank you.
And further great comments. All right, thanks for coming. Okay, and if we could go to our next item on the agenda, please.
Sure. Item 4, consent items. A, approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting held on May 12, 2014.
Before I ask for a motion to consent, I actually have a question on structure and policy of this. I do have a couple of questions regarding these minutes or things that I want to identify for future agendas. Do I do that now, or do we go to a motion to approve? Do it now?
Chair Miller and Commissioners, you could discuss that, bringing that agenda item during staff comments.
Okay, so we'll come back. Okay, so let me make sure I don't disagree with the minutes before I agree to go on. Okay. Okay. If we could go on to the next item, please. We are going to take the next item out of order, Ms. Alexanian.
Sorry, Chair Miller, if we could approve the minutes, if there is a consensus to approve, please.
Thank you. Do we have a consensus to approve the May 2014 minutes? I need a motion and then a consensus.
I will move accepting the May 24th meeting?
May 12th.
May 12th.
May 12th, as read,
I
or as
second.
written.
And from those that are in presence, it looks like we have a consensus unless I decide to disagree, right?
Correct.
I'm going to agree.
Thank you.
Okay, just keeping it light. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, please.
Chair Miller, staff respectfully requests that we take item 6A out of order at this time.
That would be fine.
Item 6A, under reports for information only, report regarding city's reorganization impact on the Commission on the Status of Women.
Chair Miller, our city manager Scott Ochoa is here to provide the presentation for this report.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. May it please the Commission. Welcome, Commissioner Law. It's a tremendous list of volunteers that you join. It's really a wonderful group. I wanted to come and outline the staff report that was submitted to you for this agenda, and in doing so, thank you for your indulgence and your patience as we go through this period of transition. It truly is a period of transition that's been hallmarked, at least in my tenure with Glendale, first by a reorganization in 2012 and then a more recent reorganization in this 2014. What some of you who have been here for the last term will know is that about a year ago we moved from management services staffing this commission to community services and parks. And that was as much a function of the loss of personnel, full-time personnel in the management services operation as it was anything else. Well, as we've gone through the balance of our recession-related and really focusing on just business streamlining efforts in this last reorganization, trying to find ways to save money, do the same types of work for a little bit less cost to free up capacity for the rest of the organization. As we've gone through that continuum, we now have the need to lighten the load on CSP, on community services and parks. Now, the Commission does great work. These are difficult times, certainly, and we balance the ability to provide the level of staff report that we want to see with the need to staff all of our different commissions. Now, in the last 10 years, we've dropped about 25% of our full-time equivalent employees. We've gone from nearly 2,000 employees to, at this point, less than 1,500 full-time equivalent employees. Yet we haven't really altered the profile of any of our commissions, and with good reason. The commissions are made up of volunteers that help out the community and really advance the council's vision, challenge the council on some items, and as this commission well knows, bringing up issues that sometimes don't make their way, don't percolate to the dais when the council's sitting here. So certainly there's a need to continue that type of discussion with this body. However, I think to the extent that this commission, unlike most commissions, but similar to maybe one or two others, would also engage in programming and fundraising, that would absorb staff resources. So there evolved in our discussions with the commissioners individually, as we've talked with staff, an opportunity to migrate the commission back to a more traditional role for commissions, meaning policy advice and education, much like what you experienced just now from Sergeant Saruda, bringing great information into the public realm to be discussed, debated, and ultimately recommended to the City Council, and less on the direct programming, less on the fundraising. All that said, if we are able to make that transition, what that allows to happen is for the CSW to move back to management services, to my office, to be staffed in the person of Ms. Christine Powers, who you know very well because Christine had been the staff support to the Commission for quite some time. In addition, we would be looking to move the Commission while keeping the profile that it has on TV and with the appropriate level of staffing, move it to a quarterly basis, understanding that as issues come up for sponsorships, for timely legislative advocacy, that the Commission, much like the City Council, can call special meetings as needed. So we would have 4 seminal points throughout the year to handle the regular business of the Commission, yet have the flexibility to do periodic special meetings for those things that are very time sensitive. We would hope that in doing so, we maximize the benefit of your time, we maximize the benefit to the community because we're maintaining the profile of the Commission on the Status of Women, and at the same time stretch our staff resources just a little bit further, and thus allow the Commission to do much more steering and much less rowing, because at this point, due to the hard work that's gone into the commissions before you, the Commission sits on a fund of about $97,000 that you have at your disposal to use towards programming to advance the types of programs you would like to see. The difference being the Commission won't be doing programming. You will be allowing other community nonprofit groups or even city departments, for that matter, to do that work versus doing it directly. It's a little bit of a paradigm shift, but I think if we are able to see the same vision, we can continue doing the good work of the Commission. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Who has questions they'd like to start with?
Commissioner,
Commissioner Conjoyan, please.
just clarification, you mentioned about 97,000 that we have in our account. How we are going to use if we have women's issue and we have some project and we need some help from like other agencies, maybe we need to pay them. Do we have to come to the city council to say this much money we need, or we have right to?
I would tell you that again, thanks to the hard work of previous commissions and this commission as well, you have that money to use as you see fit. Now, the city does have protocols for the expenditure of those funds, for appropriation of those funds. But within certain thresholds that Ms. Powers can outline for you, you have wide latitude for spending those dollars for the public purposes outlined by the mission of the Commission on the Status of Women. So if there is an event upcoming that you all agree on that you would like to sponsor, much like the Girls on the Run later on today or in this evening's agenda, by all means, you would be able to do that. I think your point is very well taken, though, that as you find this new vision for the Commission, this evolving vision of the Commission, I think you are well placed in your January meeting to have that strategic visioning session. Bring in a facilitator, roll up the sleeves and say, okay, what is it that we want to accomplish in the coming year and beyond? How will we spend those dollars to maximize the benefit to the community? All that is within your purview.
Other comments?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burns?
Thank you. Mr. Ochoa, how are you?
I'm well. I forgot to mention I am a soldier in the Army of Pink. I'm not wearing pink, but I will be wearing it tomorrow. So certainly I do appreciate you doing that for me, and you as well.
$97,000 is a substantial amount of money. However, I can blink my eye and get rid of that in a couple of days. It wouldn't take very much. There are any number of groups in the city, nonprofits, that would be delighted to get massive chunks of the 97. I think that we make a mistake, however, if we start without serious consideration and 3 or 4 months of work to think about how we are going to best maximize that 97,000. Can we take that 97 out of the city? Could I say, or could I have that 97 to put it somewhere else where it might draw some interest, where we might make some money, where we then can become a donor or a supporter of a group that's outside of the city?
Presuming that we're not talking about a two-party out-of-state check without ID.
Well, I was thinking of Vegas, but
I will go with you. Yes, the short answer is my understanding that if the commission were inclined, for example, that money could go to the Community Foundation of the Verdugos, that you as a commission, understanding that the commission membership changes over time as people cycle on, cycle off, but that you would be able to have it reside there. Now, there are still controls over that money. Has to be used for that stated public purpose for the mission of the commission. Still has to be recommended to the city council, still has to be approved by the city council for those larger expenditures. But could it reside in a different location? yes, it could. And further, there's something to what you're certainly describing, that if it were residing with a foundation, although the city is a nonprofit organization, we have the nonprofit status, sometimes folks who would otherwise like to be a benefactor, a patron of CSW, might not be wanting to write a check to City of Glendale for fear of not knowing exactly where it's going to reside, even are those restricted accounts that go towards specific funds, specific programs. Thus, if you were to take that money, move it to a different location, maybe it's more appealing to donors. Maybe folks are able to program you into estate planning. Maybe there are corporate donors that want to place money in this arena. All that is certainly within your authority and jurisdiction.
I have a question, and if I may, Mr. Ochoa, and I actually have a number of questions, but I won't send them off all at once for the interest that they might come up amongst everyone else. First off, I want to thank you for coming to our meeting tonight to have this discussion with us, and really please know that all my questions come with the utmost respect for what you're doing and the running of our city. So with that, and respectfully, I would like to know, when is this coming before council? Will there be a hearing? Will there be discussion amongst council? Is this it? Do they discuss it tomorrow? Do we ever get to come before them, or is this it?
We will be bringing a code amendment relating to your meetings before the city council in the month of November.
Okay.
That would come, then it would take effect and in time for you to schedule that January meeting. I believe it's January 13th. That is the vehicle for the entire discussion as it moves before the council.
Is it just a discussion about the amount of times we meet, or is it a discussion? I'm struggling with what the charter says and where this is going without us being able to have a dialogue with council. And with that being said, again, we've met multiple times. You know my position on this, so this doesn't come as a surprise for the viewing. And what I'm really trying to understand is how, if this came out of a charter meeting, this is my understanding, it's a charter that came before council and there was a discussion on it, doesn't in entirety the discussion have to go before them? Don't people get to ask questions of them?
Most certainly they do. The idea, though, I don't believe it's the charter discussion as is the Glendale Municipal Code.
Okay.
And the code contains the features of the commission. So code describes the Commission on the Status of Women, has outlines what the mission is, outlines what the duties are, and again, to the extent that the duties are of any commission are to advise policy, to educate. I think we'd be hard pressed to find in the code the discussion about the authorization for the fundraising and some of the direct programming. And at the end of the day, that's what this really is about. To the extent that we've pulled back resources to really unprecedented levels. No one here in the organization, I'm still relatively new, but no one who has been here for quite a long time can recall when we've been fewer than 1,500 full-time equivalent employees without really pulling back from all of our other major business lines. So to the extent that we're trying to stretch just a little bit further with even fewer people, the idea is, what are those things that we are doing that we can do other ways? So when you think about the programming that the commission does and the staff is doing that programming, does it make sense for us to spend $1 to raise $1.01 or $1.05 on fundraising? Can we have other nonprofits, the nonprofits that Commissioner Burns is talking about, can they take on some of the programming? Can they take on some of the fundraising? All of that goes into this larger thinking. Now, the idea that we will have a debate over the profile of the commission, we're not really changing the mission of the commission. We're actually taking it back really to what it was as it's drawn out in the code. What we are changing, when you go through all of the language, the thing that's changing is the dates of the meetings and the schedule of those meetings from monthly to quarterly. Understanding you can always still call a special meeting. So as we look for an appropriate vehicle, the discussion is, the appropriate vehicle for the discussion is the meeting schedule, but within that discussion comes all of the other policy issues that the council has to wrestle with. So I think everyone will have that opportunity to have that discussion, and it will be before the council, but it has to come up in a manner in which we're actually changing something.
Okay, and if I may, to my colleagues, just 2 follow-ups to that, and then I will completely go silent for a little bit. Okay. We understand the position. I specifically understand the position of the city, and I understand dollars, and working for one of the largest employers in the city, I get completely where that's at. With that being said, I want to just question and understand, is it the staff timing to the programming, or is it the programming that we do that is the issue?
It is the staffing that goes towards the programming and fundraising. So if you were to say, for example, if you were raising money and raising it at such a clip that you would be able to hire a staff person to do all that for you, that probably starts to make a lot of sense to us on the staff resource side. The issue there, though, I think, is if you get to that point where you have that type of, for lack of a better term, business plan, then you really start to function much less like a city commission and much more like a private nonprofit. And that's okay, too. I mean, if ultimately this group were to continue on this evolution, matriculate through the stages of organizational development to a private, freestanding, nonprofit organization that is free from the little b bureaucracy of city governance, that's okay, too. But I don't know that we're there yet.
And I don't know that I could ever support that in terms of what a commission means to the city. When I look around the state of California, when I look around nationally, there is a bigger audience than Glendale that supports the Commission on the Status of Women, the county commission, and albeit that they've struggled, we do know it's a UN initiative, and so I probably and respectfully, although we'll have fun, and I will vote for you in the Army of Pink, that I promise, at least once. Maybe twice, maybe 4 times. But that being said, I think what my question goes to specifically on programming, if to be more realistic in our lives as a commission, the report was written as man's inhumanity. For example, we were on a panel that staff helped. A lot of city staff were involved in this whole Man's Inhumanity Week. And so in the report it's written, while we wouldn't do programming for being on that particular panel, I guess I don't get it, just in terms of realistically. I embrace the policy. Let me start there. But we also know that programming is what keeps you visual, and it's what keeps you known. I get the staff time. That being said, there are those specific things where the commission can play a valuable role. I'm not just asking, I don't care if you take us off TV every month, but to not let us meet, to reorganize ourselves, and you know this, so you know I'm not speaking out of turn. So my last and final thing is, can I call special meetings for November and December?
I would defer to...
I'm not trying to be flip. I'm really trying to understand.
I would defer back to the commission and to what your view is on those meeting dates and on your agenda topics. I suspect that you will call a meeting whenever there is business to be had. And so the idea behind the quarterly meetings is that if you're doing policy advice, now you can fill an agenda. We can fill lots of agendas with lots of things. I don't know that necessarily, to use a football metaphor, pushes the ball down the field in terms of what the mission and profile of the commission. If you're meeting just to meet, I would argue that that's not necessarily a good expense of your time, not necessarily the staff time, and we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But to the extent that if you were to have a monthly meeting with little on it or nothing on it, and you start to cancel those meetings, I think that does much more damage to the profile and the integrity of the commission, because people start to wonder, well, why are they canceling all of these meetings, as opposed to having those 4 basic dates where we will do the business of the commission. That's when it happens. Right. And if there's something that comes up that's timely, that we need to meet, then you do. And to the extent that you do it in a meaningful way, I think that only increases the viability and the gravitas of the commission.
I agree with you. I agree with you, sir. I just remember we haven't met for 4 months. We're now discussing reorganization, and we wouldn't meet for 2 more. My question really was specific to the reorganization time.
I think leadership and authority have to be shared, and to the extent that if you wanted to schedule upcoming meetings in the months of November and December, recognizing that people's schedule gets difficult in the month of December with
Right.
the holidays. November's not much easier with 2 holidays where people are off. We didn't, as we talked about it as staff, didn't take that lightly at all. From the standpoint of saying, well, what is available, what is meaningful, what needs to be done, I don't suspect that this commission, that these commissioners are going to walk away from this meeting and just go into hibernation mode until January. I fully expect and believe that this commission will be putting together considered opinions about what the future of this commission is, and further be willing and wanting to share that with staff. And so when you arrive, as I say, when you arrive in January, sleeves are rolled up and it is a working session, meaning you are sharing your thoughts about what the future of this commission is, as opposed to being in a more responsive mode of listening to reports and developing a position about them. This will be more about the commission than about anybody else.
Okay, anybody else have a few comments?
I have.
I'll be back to you.
Okay. She just mentioned if we are going to have a special meetings. I know in this 4 months, because there is a lot seminars, conventions, how we are going to know, like if we are meeting quarterly, is going to, staff will notify us, or we are going to have a special meeting, who is going to go to this convention or seminars? How we will know all this?
All of the correspondence that we can legally have under the Brown Act will continue to be had. And again, if there's something that comes up, if there were a conference, to use that example, that comes up and we need to have a special meeting, and if it's a very brief meeting,
yes,
5 minutes just to approve going and the appropriation that goes along with that, or whatever the case might be, that is well within your jurisdiction to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Student ex officio.
Hi, thank you for your report. I just have a question for clarification. So if the commission wants to donate funds to an organization like we have before to support them, does that have to go through approval by the city council first, or are we allowed to do that ourselves?
I believe that you can do that up to a certain limit, and then it has to go to city council like any other expenditure or appropriation. So whatever has occurred in the past will continue to occur in the future.
Thank you.
Do any other commissioners have any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Are we still going to apply for grants?
Yes, ma'am. We have a grant writer that we have retained, California Consulting. They are now putting together the profile of grants that they will be soliciting, and I don't mind telling you that the very significant focus of their grant writing is on social services for the community. You've seen it on CDBG Advisory Committee. That portion of the money from HUD, the CDBG block grant money, has been the most impacted. And so we know there's a tremendous need, as Commissioner Burns had indicated, out there. So we will be going for those types of grants through our California Consulting.
Thank you for all this great information.
Could I ask
Yes.
a quick question? I just wanted to know, was there any consideration or discussion about proposing bi-monthly meetings, meeting every other month? Because I think, obviously, I'm the new kid on the block, but my concern would be being able to maintain momentum forward. I think that if we're talking about legislative, making policy recommendations, let's just say that an issue comes up in front of City Council, the commissioners want to take a position here on the commission regarding that policy or whatever it is, and we need to have some discussion, and maybe people want to come and give testimony, and it's going to be a multi-meeting issue. It's not going to be able to play out potentially with a 3-month gap. I think that's my concern. So I just wanted to know, what were the other discussions, and are there other ideas about scheduling meetings less frequently than once a month, but maybe more frequently than quarterly?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. The two items that come into play there, one, again, staff resources. If we have lost a sufficient number of people in CSP where this commission can no longer reside in CSP, it cannot happen. I would not recommend that to City Council. Then it has to come back to management services. If it comes back to management services, there is a finite amount of capacity within that pipeline to be able to do that work. And that's a function of what I do, what Christine does, and the staff that we work with, just what is available. And so that's one factor. The other factor is in looking at the agendas and looking at the profile of what the commission has done, and also how often the items that come up before City Council migrate to commission and vice versa. Now, we've had a pretty interesting last couple of years. We've had the gun show, something that folks have wanted to talk a great deal about. That was there at the Civic Auditorium. We've had the self-defense classes. And every so often, we do get other items that'll percolate through the system. But my point being that those items are sufficiently infrequent, and to the extent that you still have the capacity, as Chair Miller has indicated, to call a special monthly meeting if need be for those somewhat rare instances where something does come up that is necessary for the commission to be convened to discuss. So I think that the quarterly is what gives you the benefit of not ever really having to cancel a meeting, but at the same time, through your own discretion and authority, being able to call those special meetings to ensure that you are timely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did ask that question 3 weeks ago on our phone call. So we would be able to call a special meeting if there was a hearing situation. Good question.
Okay.
I do have a question, if I may, Mr. Ochoa, in terms of, and I really am seeking as we think about the great city we live in, which we all know we know that, the fourth safest city, and we think about the Commission on the Status of Women, and we think about what makes up great cities. And when people, my question goes to what other cities look at and think about us, because we do attend the state meetings. We have attended in the past the national meetings. So I can tell you that many of these commissions up and down the state of California are very concerned because in their eyes, Glendale was a leader, is a leader, has contributed a lot, has raised funds, has been active. They've modeled other programs after us. And while we can understand, and we've spoken with them, and we understand the whole scope of policy, and that is really an area that we need to increase more in this commission. At the same time, you have described us as being, you have said that we would be leaders that would steer rather than row. And when I talked about that with some of our other commissioners in other cities, they said, it sounds like you're going to sink. So help us respond to that.
Well, I think that leadership profile is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that you are going to sink because of the number of meetings that you have as a regularly scheduled basis, I would submit to you that you are in much more precarious condition than you would otherwise believe. On the other hand, if you think that the idea of us having 4 regular meetings and however many special meetings that we might need is just a function of the location and geography of a discussion, of a meeting, of the work, of the good faith that goes into what this commission does, well then, again, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and those folks that would otherwise criticize the evolution that's going on here probably are speaking out of their own insecurity, that what they have is dependent upon the exterior, more material factors about what it is that they do. And the number of times that they walk into a chambers defines who and what they are, as opposed to the quality of the work that is being done and the contributions that are being made. I think you're absolutely right. Glendale is a leader. Glendale will continue to be a leader. And to that end, those folks can ask you how well you're doing when you're already there and they're migrating towards that goal on the hill. That's what I would tell them.
Can you put it in a voicemail for me?
Certainly.
You should auction that off, by the way, with your Army of Pink, just like Vin Scully does with the Dodgers. You may just think about that. All right. Does anybody else have questions?
Just a quick clarification. Mr. Ochoa, you said that the staffing efforts that were affecting the budget, the budgetary constraint on staffing was really due to the fundraising efforts of the commission. Is that correct?
The fundraising and the programming as well, the overall profile of the commission.
Okay, so does that mean that the staffing efforts then were not as focused on drafting meeting agendas, communications with the commissioners? It was really more about the programming and raising money?
I think that's fair, yes.
Okay, so it's not the actual meetings themselves that are a burden on staff time. It's the other activities associated with the programming. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this.
I think that there's a balance that's there. If you look on your agenda today, for example, there's also a discussion on the closeout of the Jewels. There's a closeout on the Camp Rosie. There's a lead up to the Camp Rosie. There's all the other factors. If we're putting together an agenda, the minutes notwithstanding, the agenda and what we in this particular business refer to as the care and feeding of our body, of the city council for me, the commission for our staff, that is ultimately what's going to take the largest amount of time. Posting an agenda, especially now, is something that happens relatively quickly. I think to the extent that if we're doing a camp for young ladies, the young people in town, all the work that goes into that camp, even though we're not necessarily teaching it directly, that is what eats into those staff resources. By contrast, if the commission were to say, we want Department of Community Services and Parks to continue Camp Rosie and give us a proposal, the commission can evaluate that proposal, and then from that point on, CSP is doing that work, right? Everything that goes up to it and then ramp down, because you are directly involved, I think that's the programming that starts to eat up the time. The fundraising, the fundraiser, such as this, that does eat up a significant portion of time, and not just of the staff that is directly here sitting at the dais, but also their support staff, because these folks don't work as an island. It's all the other people in the office that pitch in because they want to make sure that it goes well.
Vice Chair Burns.
A couple of things just to make sure. We're coming to council in November.
Yes.
Do we know what date?
I'm hoping for the 18th of November.
Okay.
We are dark. I think we have a council meeting on the 4th and then the 18th. I believe it's the 18th. Everything else is dark in November because of the holidays.
Just to sort of skirt around the signature programs of this commission, I would say Camp Rosie. I would say the luncheon.
Yes.
Girls on the Run.
Candlelight Vigil.
Which one?
Candlelight Vigil.
Candlelight Vigil. The signature programs. Am I right when I'm hearing you say that if we're going to steer instead of row, this commission would then decide if Parks and Rec came to us and said, we'd like to do Camp Rosie, the commission then would be asked to fund Camp Rosie to Parks and Rec?
That's conceivable. That all or a part, or if the YW came to you and said, we want to do it, we'll take that signature program and run with it. They probably would look to you for funding, but at the same time, and not to sound callous about the whole thing, but as a business proposition, if there were a nonprofit out there that were going to take a well-established brand like Camp Rosie, they might be able to take it at a discount from you, because they intend to use it as a means to heighten their own profile and possibly even raise funds as a nonprofit organization. All of that is, again, well within your jurisdiction and authority to make those types of those decisions.
Well, that's what all of this discussion is going to be in the next 2, 3, 4 months, isn't it?
That's what I hope and expect, ma'am.
And truly, I was actually done until you spoke about branding, which I love the whole business exchange of it. Who owns the name of Camp Rosie? Because you know the Santa Monica Commission has a Rosie Goes to Wall Street, and I guess I could ask the former commissioners where the name is, but do we have some ownership over the idea of it, or we've passed it on to someone?
Good evening, Chair Miller, members of the Commission.
Welcome back, Ms. Powers.
Thank you.
Mrs. Powers.
Camp Rosie, where it came from Glendale, we didn't ever trademark the name, and actually the Glendale CSW got the idea from Santa Monica. City of Santa Monica CSW runs a Camp Rosie. It's a little bit different. Theirs is an enterprise fund, so they charge girls to participate, and it's more about building carpentry skills and non-traditional career skills. Their camp is actually located on their yard at the City of Santa Monica, so it's a little bit different, but we were inspired by them and we made it our own. But
It was also on the Today Show this year, by the way, with Maria Shriver.
very nice. So wasn't our idea, but and we didn't trademark it, so anyone can run with it, so to speak. That answers the question.
Okay, that does.
Chairman Miller, they'd run with it, but they couldn't run with the stuff that we've done.
Well, there might be an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we might do different. Okay, are there any other questions for our city manager, Mr. Ochoa, who doesn't want to spend all his evenings in Glendale, right?
Without papers to grade, I'm sorry.
Me too, by the way. Okay.
Could I just ask a question, and this question may be directed toward you or toward both of you, but what's the next step in determining the future of the commission? Is it that we wait until the scheduled meeting in January, or is there going to be communication with the commissioners about, what happens next?
That's a great question, because certainly Mr. Grant, your attorney, can advise you with respect to the Brown Act and what you can discuss and what you cannot discuss, and what type of information, one-way information that the staff can provide to the commission without violating the Brown Act. There can be no collective consensus that's built, even if it's on a daisy chain basis. So we can continue and likely will in anticipation of a working session in January, information that either we are collecting and not necessarily attributing to anyone, or again, developing a collective consensus, but ideas from other commissions that are out there. My guess is you are going to be collecting all that same information on your own. I would think that the commission would like to have a facilitator there at your January meeting. And either we do it in this chamber or possibly to do it at a more conducive type of setting, to bring out the whiteboards and the markers, and let's start talking about what ultimately is a work program and a profile that you would like to see, taking comment from the public, because it is a Brown Act meeting with public comment. I think all that happens come January, but in the intervening time, you're doing your research, you're putting together your thoughts, you're talking to other folks, provided it all happens within the strictures of the Brown Act.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
And thank you, commissioners, for all your comments and thoughtful words and input. Okay, next item on the agenda, please. We will go back in order on the agenda.
Item 5, action items. At A, consideration and discussion of sponsorship requests for fall 2014 season of Girls on the Run in South Glendale. At 1, motion providing direction regarding sponsorship requests.
Chair
Do we
Miller.
have a brief report?
Of course. Chair Miller, members of the commission, Girls on the Run is a fitness and empowerment program for girls in 3rd to 8th grades. The after-school program includes a fun and interactive curriculum to encourage positive emotional, social, mental, and physical development. The program combines training for a 3.1 mile, which is a 5K walk-run event, with self-esteem enhancing, uplifting workouts. Girls on the Run has been or is part of the Commission's strategic plan, and the Commission has been able to fund this program to take place in South Glendale previously. They were here requesting funding for the spring run, and now it's the fall 2014 2014. Now they're here requesting funding for their fall 2014 program. Since 2010, the Commission has provided sponsorship for this program in South Glendale. In spring 2014, Girls on the Run served 85 girls at 6 program sites across Glendale. With support from the Commission and other donors, 48 girls in Glendale received financial assistance this spring valued at $7,700. Their current request is a $2,500 sponsorship for a team at Edison Elementary School for the fall 2014 season, which actually started on September 15th. As part of the report, it does identify what it costs, and it costs about $5,000 for one team. And Girls on the Run does fundraising as well, and also charges those families and girls who can afford it. And so the $2,500 sponsorship would go towards that, towards the $5,000 to help for those families who would not be able to afford to pay for joining and being a part of the program. We do have Elizabeth Sadlin from Girls on the Run here if the Commission has any specific questions about the program. But before you is a motion to consider sponsorship of the fall 2014 Girls on the Run program in Edison Elementary. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, or Elizabeth is also with us.
Ms. Sadlin, if you could come to the podium, because we've had such a long relationship with you. Very, very briefly, but for our new commissioner, could you just tell our history quickly together in terms of, we have 6 teams, right?
Yes, that's right. So there are 2 teams that do spring only. We do seasons in the spring and in the fall. 2 of the teams are spring only. 4 of the teams are both seasons. And South Glendale, our expansion into South Glendale was at the encouragement and then the financial support of this commission to be able to make sure that we were able to serve our mission, which is across LA County, to serve the full diversity of girls. We partnered with the commission to serve the full diversity of Glendale. So we have, over several years, as you mentioned, been able to grow into many of the locations in Glendale and sustain that relationship with these communities that are so important to us. Happy to answer any questions you have. And this is your logo.
Oh, great.
Is that the color this year?
This is last fall's season. The T-shirts for this fall will be printed. We order next week, so we really wanted to make sure that we got to talk to you, because if you want your logo on, then we need to wrap that up.
The team that started September 15th.
Yes.
Which team is that again?
All across LA County. The fall season began in the last 2 weeks. So
our money would go to which team in Glendale?
Edison is the team that you have sponsored in the past, and that has a very high rate of financial assistance and a large, very active team.
So they have a high rate of financial assistance right now?
Yes, they do.
Do we have questions, or do we want to make a motion? Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because we may have had this information and I just went right over me. But I don't recall ever seeing a breakdown of specific costs to get to the 5,000. I can see where habits, insurance, blah, 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 blah. But have I ever seen anything that breaks it down into the individual costs for the $5,000?
So the costs are broken across, so we're serving, I think, 55 teams across the county. So all of those items are detailed for each of our budget line items to serve all 55 teams. And so we break it down to the team cost from there. And we would be happy to be able to provide more detailed information about how much each of those items contributes to the total, if that's helpful.
Well, I just wondered if we had received it.
I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of information we've exchanged.
Vice Chair Burns, you aren't wrong. You are actually consistent, because you've asked this question before, and we have been provided detail before. So, yeah, I wish I did. I wish my memory didn't work like that all the time.
But do you remember that, giving us this?
I know we provide that detailed information monthly to our board and to funders in a variety of different ways. So happy to pull that for you if that's helpful. Thank you for remembering.
It's in an Excel format, right?
It is many formats, and one of them is Excel, yes.
Okay. Do you want that? What's the action on that? Do you need that to vote, or do you want that, or?
I was merely asking because when I was looking at this last night and the night before, I knew that joyful, healthy, confident girls were important.
There you go.
So I also know that the money that we have as we're changing over to a different format is important to us.
Absolutely.
So I was wondering if the Girls on the Run could get along with less than $2,500, how difficult it would be if we cut it back a little bit. I was just trying to figure all of those things out.
And that's an important part of your stewardship of your dollars. And so our commitment is to be able to continue the teams in the relationships and the communities that we have. Be able to continue in South Glendale, and we will continue to do fundraising in all the ways that we can. We would like to be able to continue to recognize this long-term partnership with the T-shirt logo, which you stretch to be able to go to the $2,500 to do that, and that is where we are now. So we will welcome whatever support feels like a good fit for the commission at this time. I also want to say I'm really grateful. We, as Girls on the Run, help girls find their voice and use that voice in the world. And this commission has been that voice for girls and women for all the years that we've been working together. And I really appreciate the regular opportunities for that education that you provide, in addition to the partnership that we've had in particular. So any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Madam Chair, I have
Yes.
brief question. I just wanted to ask about the program itself, and I'm sorry, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because of, being so newly arrived, but the after-school program, it's a daily program? Is it
twice a week.
Twice a week.
For 12 weeks.
For 12 weeks. And twice a week for an hour?
Hour and a half
okay.
each session. Right.
So each session is an hour and a half, so they're getting 3 hours of instruction or enrichment or whatever you want to call it for 12
exactly,
weeks.
for 12 weeks.
Okay.
For each season, and that's spring and fall.
So are many of these girls already enrolled in existing after-school care programs at the school, and so then they're just pulled out for the hour and a half or whatever?
In our Glendale sites, no. In other locations, we are partnering with existing after-school programs and delivering focused activities that they don't get otherwise in a ratio that is very beneficial to the program. But our Edison site is the girls stay after school and get together with their volunteer coaches and their team and then go home.
Okay.
So you know that this commission fully supports Girls on the Run. All have in the past, have for a long time. Former commissioners who are here in the audience handed out medals last year, so we all have participated and agree. For the dais, we have 3 alternatives. If we look at page 3 on our report, we can make a motion to approve the $2,500 to support a team at Edison Elementary. We can choose to not support it, or we can choose an alternative amount. Do we feel that we're ready to move on this, or do you need to have more discussion? I'm ready to move, but I can't make the motion. So I wish I could.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
To approve.
Do we have a second? The motion is to approve the full $2,500. Do we have a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, we have a second. So do we have discussion, or are we ready to take a vote?
I think if we approve the $2,500, there has to be a caveat that says, going forward, after this particular $2,500 is approved, that this may very well be the last time we would be able to do this.
For this amount, I would add, right? You mean always?
This amount?
Is that your thought, always?
Well, for what I'm trying to say is, I think you're caught right now. I mean, you did not know that this was going to happen to the commission. And I guess the idea of the $2,500 was what you were expecting.
No.
More than likely, you weren't expecting that.
No, we come in fresh every time, open to whatever the right answer is for you.
Well, there's been such a change that I would think that the commission would have to really look at it again before, if you came back again.
I understand.
If there was a vote going for $2,500 now, I'm not sure that would be something that I personally could support going forward.
Sounds like there's big changes that you're all considering, and the opportunities to be able to think about how to bring together the support of the community that you've built so much over the years to be able to do, not even about us, but the work that you have done and even more. So I would like to hope that there's a lot of potential there. And so yes, next time will be next time. This time is this time.
As you can see, we're probably not going to be fundraising.
And just as we get ready, just so you know where my vote stands, I vote to approve and to give 25 when we get there, but I would encourage you to come back as often as you can and as long as we have money. I mean, and that will be for who's ever on the commission to decide at that time, and we'll see where we're at. Vice Chair Burns' comments are well taken. She's looking out for, I mean, we are in a little bit of a quandary because we don't know what the future holds, but we know that we fully support everything that you do. So, you know, I think there's motion on the dais, and I think if we're ready to vote, we should do it. So, we have the motion, we have the vote, we have the second, can we call it, please?
Certainly. Vice Chair Burns?
Yes.
Commissioners Kajayan?
Yes.
Lal?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes. Motion to approve, 2,500. It's a pleasure to be your partner, to be able to be your partner again at this time. Thank you.
Happy to stand with you in November.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
5B, appointment of selection committee for the 2014-2015 student ex officio members. At 1, motion appointing 2 members to the selection committee.
And can we have a brief report on this, Ms. Alexander?
Chair Miller, members of the commission, before you is a motion to appoint 2 commissioners to a selection committee who would then interview the student ex officios. The Commission on Status of Women by ordinance, we have 2 student ex officios who are part of the commission, and ex officios Sahaki and Emery Zahanian were our last year's ex officios. So they are now moving on to college, and so we will be selecting 2 new ex officios to join the commission for the next year. The applications were distributed in May 2014. And the original deadline was July 11th, and we had only received 1 application at that time. So staff, in working with our chair, we extended the deadline to July 25th to encourage more students to apply for the positions. And luckily, we were able to get 8 applications. So staff is requesting 2 commissioners to be appointed to the selection committee, who will then interview the potential ex officios and select 2 new ex officios who will join you on the dais for the 2014-15 term. The term for the 2014-15 term will be October through October 2014. So I apologize. So we'll do, I'm confused because of the dates, so I apologize. This, it will be for October 2014, so, or whenever they're appointed, which would be November, and they would serve through September of 2015. Because we want to make sure that it coincides with the school terms. because the students will be out of high school, will have graduated from high school, and they would not be able to serve with the same term of the meetings for the commission if we go to quarterly meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alexander. And I think we all were going to somehow ask you that question, and regardless of what dates, we know exactly the point where you're going. So thank you for that. Which is really, it's related to the school year. Now, for this particular, do we have any volunteers first off?
Yes.
Okay. We have Vice Chair Burns, and we need a second committee member.
Here it was me and you, maybe.
It's a lovely experience. Let me start here. Let me do, I hate to use the word upsell, but I actually truly want to sell you. I want to sell you. Uh-oh, that was a slip. We have our student ex officio with us. I want you to, this is Rima Sahakian. This is Rima's last meeting with us. And I will just say a couple of quick words about when we interviewed last year, we had some really excellent standout candidates. It's pretty clear in terms of who is groomed and ready and positioned, and Ms. Sahakian was 1,000% that person, and Ms. Mirzahakian was the second person. And so, Rima, you want to tell a little bit about your experience, and you want to tell about, what I want you to know is our interview was fabulous. She wants to go into political, she has a interest in politics, and let's have you say more and what your experience was like, and tell her how she missed.
It was actually one of my first times applying for such a big position because I had done student government in school, but I had never reached out to work in the city. So when I arrived for my interview, it was great because there was actually a student commissioner there. She asked me questions as well, so she kind of saw if I was fit for the position also. And of course, the commission members were there. And it was just a great experience to be able to be in a professional environment and to see, you know, the types of questions and what was being asked, and, you know, to get used to the environment and how in the past I've worked with women and children, because of course that is the main mission of the commission. And it was, interestingly enough, I had worked in the past with my fourth grade teacher on a project, so I mentioned that. And also they asked about, you know, my personal interests and to see, you know, if I'm fit for the commission or not. So it was actually a great experience, and I remember there were a couple of us being interviewed that day, and it was just great to see students being so interested in something in the city, so it was great. Yeah.
And tell us what you're doing now.
Currently,
you graduated.
Yes, I graduated from Hoover High School in June, and I currently attend the University of California, Irvine, and my classes are in session, finally. It started in October, and it's just great to be able to move out to somewhere else, but of course I miss Glendale. It is a big transition, and hopefully I'll be back for future commission-sponsored events.
Sold.
Okay, so in terms of the motion around this, do we need to make a motion, or is it just asking for appointment on the committee?
A motion appointing those two commissioners to the committee.
So, Commissioner Kajoyan, could you please make a motion regarding our committee? Yes.
I make a motion that both of them to be on the committee.
Before we vote, it was mentioned that in the report that a student commissioner can also be a part of it, so would it be possible for me to join them as well?
I'll let your committee speak up. The student doesn't vote, and our student ex officio is well aware of it, but she would probably be a welcome. I would let the committee
welcome addition.
Welcome addition.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a motion that would sound like you make a motion that we agree to have Vice Chair Byrne and Commissioner Lal serve on our committee.
Yes, I make a motion that, yes.
Sorry, Chair Miller, I apologize. I should have mentioned the ex officio bill, the option for the ex officio to also join the committee, but if we could just include that in the motion as well. So
Thank you.
We'll have Commissioner Burns and Commissioner Kojayan on the selection committee joined by, Commissioner Lal and Commissioner Burns on the selection committee joined by ex officio Sahakian. And then just to clarify on the terms, just for the commission's clarification, because I know I probably confused you as part of my report, but the term for the ex officios will end September 2015.
Thank you.
So we have a motion, if we can.
So, can you take roll call, though, I'm sure?
I apologize if I didn't hear a second, but I need a second.
Oh, we need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Vice Chair Burns,
Yes.
Commissioners Kojayan,
Yes.
Lal,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, please.
Item 5C, consideration and discussion of promoting Domestic Violence Awareness Month, DVAM. At 1, motion to accept proclamation from City Council designating October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Chair Miller, members of the commission, October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, this commission has always been involved in raising awareness and making sure the public is aware and honoring the victims. And in the past several years, has had several programs, including requesting a proclamation from the City Council designating October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Before you today is a motion to approve accepting a proclamation from City Council designating October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we've normally done this on the first Tuesday in October at 6 p.m. The first Tuesday after this commission meeting, knowing full well that the commission needs to approve this, would be tomorrow, October 14th, at 6 p.m. The City Council would present a proclamation to designate October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And traditionally, the chair of the commission is present along with the commissioners, whoever is available to attend, to accept that proclamation. Furthermore, there's also the Candlelight Vigil, which historically the commission has partnered with the Glendale YWCA. And this year, the Candlelight Vigil, which is held in memory of victims of domestic violence, both survivors and those who have lost their lives, and typically includes a program which includes speakers, including the chair of the commission or their designee if the chair is not available, members from the community, including the police department. We've had our chief in the past who had spoken, and of course, members from the YWCA. This year, with the change in scope of the commission duties and responsibilities, the commission may participate in this event by helping promote it in the community, by whether that's through social media, newsletters, flyers, helping distribute and get the word out for the event. And we wouldn't be involved in planning and coordinating the event. But the YWCA is open and has invited the commission chair to speak at the event as well. So the second motion before you is to approve assisting and promoting the Candlelight Vigil event. And as Chair Miller had mentioned, the commission has prepared in the past a Women and Families Resource Guide, which has phone numbers for resources within our community for women to refer to, and we have copies in the back. And we have some here that Ms. Hidalgo will pass out, but those resource guides will be available and will be handed out as part of the Candlelight Vigil event. And of course, we'll go ahead and make it available to the police department, as Chairman Miller mentioned earlier. So,
is it updated or is it the same?
It's the same one.
Which is updated.
Which, it's the one that we updated from last year, correct?
Staff updated last year, thanks.
Right, this is the one from last year.
Do we have to have two motions, or can we just approve domestic, but we need two?
Two motions.
Okay. So, we need a motion. Were we ready to go, the motion, Ms. Alexanian?
If commission is, yes. I conclude my
So we need a motion to accept the proclamation from City Council designating October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
I so move.
Second.
And it looks like we have consensus.
No, okay.
Okay, we'll do roll call.
Vice Chair Burns?
Yes.
Commissioners Kajayan?
Yes.
Law?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes. And now we need a second motion to assist in promoting the Candlelight Vigil event.
Discussion first. I would like to know who would be going to attend the Candlelight Vigil representing us. Commissioner Kajoyan, could you do that?
Yes, I mean.
It would be the chair or whoever the chair designates.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's written into the report as the chair, and it would be the chair or whoever the chair designates. So, okay. Do we have a motion to assist in promoting?
I would motion to approve assisting and promoting the Candlelight Vigil event.
And do we have a second?
I second.
And if we could take roll.
Vice Chair Burns?
Yes.
Commissioners Kajayan?
Yes.
Law?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes. Okay, our next item is, if you could identify our next agenda item, please.
Certainly. 5D, selection of commission officers. At 1, motion to select chair for the term of October 2014 to January 2016. And at 2, a motion to select vice chair for the term of October 2014 to January 2016.
Okay. And I need to turn this over to a record keeper, correct? Right? If we want to make nominations, we turn it over. So I am turning it over to our record keeper. Are we there?
Yes.
Okay. I nominate Linda Burns for the office of chair.
I second.
And if we could take roll.
Are there any further nominations? Okay. Hearing no further nominations, we will proceed to the roll call. Commissioner Burns?
Yes.
Kajayan?
Yes.
Ball?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
I now declare Commissioner Burns the duly elected chair of the Commission on the Status of Women. Madam Chair, the task before you now is to open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
And we're going to go down.
Don't we have to switch out chairs?
You're welcome to switch at this time, or you may just pass the gavel over.
Oh, I'll just pass the gavel. We'll keep it ceremoniously.
The business before the Commission on the Status of Women is the selection of the new vice chair. I will now entertain nominations for that office. Commissioner Kajoyan?
I nominate Commissioner Denise Miller as a vice chair.
We need a second.
No, they don't need a second.
We do not need a second. Are there any further nominations? Okay, hearing no further nominations, we'll proceed to the roll call. Commissioner Kajayan?
Yes.
Commissioner Lal?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Chair Burns?
Yes.
I now declare Commissioner Miller the duly elected vice chair of the Commission on the Status of Women.
Okay. So I've passed the gavel, so I will just stay in this chair for the remainder of the meeting. Am I supposed to switch out?
You could stay there, dear.
All right. See how eager I am to switch out? It's been a lovely experience, by the way. Congratulations to Chair, if you don't mind me just saying. We've gone through, if I may, we have gone through a tremendous amount of change, hurdles, highlights, everything you can, all things that you can imagine, specific to changing within a group. And it has really been, it has been a good, I don't want to say very good experience because that isn't, but it's not a very bad experience. It's just, it is what it is. And I think if anybody, I'm appreciative that we have a new commissioner because I think combined with the two other commissioners that are up here as well as myself, we're really going to be able to embrace change and make this commission be what it's supposed to be. And with that, it has been a pleasure and an honor to serve this city and in this capacity. And I again want to thank staff that we've had to work with for going the distance with us, and to welcome back Ms. Powers.
May I say something?
Yes, yes, you may.
It was a really great pleasure and honor to work with Denise Miller. Chair, it was chair, now it's vice chair. I learned a lot. It's a good experience. We will continue the same way with Chair Byrne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would say just one thing to you, being a Canadian, or I'm not a Canadian anymore, but I was, and we use sort of calm words.
You did not become a Canadian.
No, I didn't become a Canadian. I became an American. We use sort of calm words, but the word that I would like to use for you is, you're a fine gal. You really are. You are.
Why, thank you. Thank you. And so are all of you. Okay, next item on the agenda.
Comments.
Oh, wait a minute. Old habits die hard.
So
You
it
were
would be
supposed to
mine.
jump in. Get me out of this chair so I won't.
It's okay, just stay there. We'll do it this way. Well, we're going to have a report regarding the city's, no, we're done that. We're going to close out report on the Jewels of Glendale.
That is item 6B.
Yes, thank you.
Chair Burns, congratulations.
Thank you.
A brief report on the Jules Luncheon. The luncheon was on May 8th, and at the last meeting in May, we did briefly talk about the successes of the luncheon. Just wanted to provide a financial update. The luncheon, the net profit from the luncheon was $13,755. We brought in revenue of $25,755 and spent $11,980, which netted to $13,755. In your packet, as part of your report, you do have a breakdown of the financials as to how the funds were spent and where the revenue was raised. And I apologize to Commissioner Law for you, at least. I'm sorry, I should have probably gave a full report as to what the luncheon was, which was on May 8th, and it took place at Oakmont, which is the annual fundraiser for the Commission on the Status of Women. And we had 270 guests that were RSVP'd for the event. It was probably the largest event for the Jewels Luncheon, and this was the 10th annual luncheon. We had Lisa Bowman as the speaker at the event, and we honored Shanisha Franklin, Carmen Liberidian, Carrie Ann Myers, Colonel Nancy Sumner, Sona Yagubian, and Sherry Zahn as our Jewel of Glendale. And our Gemstone Scholarship went to Meredi Der Sarkisian as a veteran who is serving in our armed forces. And our Gem Scholarship Award went to Audrey Amirian, and that's a student in our Glendale school system. And our Chair Special Recognition went to Ann Ransford. We had Glendale Adventist Medical Center as our $5,000 diamond sponsor. We had 4 Emerald sponsors, which were GCC, the Glendale Community College, the Glendale Management Association, Massage Envy Spa, and Glendale Public Works. We had $500 in-kind Ruby sponsorships from CV Weekly and Glendale News Press, and those were ads in the paper. We had several donors for our swag bag, including Sadaf, Don Francisco's Coffee, Garden Spot Tea, Jessica Nail Polish, Gilchrist & Soames. And we sold several ads. We had 4 business card ads, 1 half-a-page ad, and 3 full-page ads. 2 of them were in-kind exchanges, so they weren't paid for. But overall, the luncheon netted $13,755 this year. This concludes my brief report. If Commission has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Well, this item is open for discussion. This item is now closed for discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just did have a very quick question. I just want to make sure I understood. This was the 10th annual event. And what is the plan for continuing the event if the commission should change its form?
Did you read the report
Oh.
that Mr. Ochoa gave us?
That they are
Yeah.
closing.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, I just want it to be in the record that this is the last one. Is that, am I reading correctly? That we pass to another organization?
May I, Chair Burns, respond?
I'm just looking for clarification.
That may be the case. My understanding is that may be the case. I also tend to think that there are other opportunities for how we might participate in other nonprofits' luncheons, whether we might participate through a scholarship format. My understanding is in its current format and function under this staff, we would not be continuing with it.
That answers my question, thank you.
Yes. But that doesn't prevent us in our future planning to, if we feel so moved by this and how that money was spent, to perhaps look at that for other nonprofits.
Understood.
Chair Burns, if I may expand on that, currently there is a plan for the commission to participate in a strategic planning session. I think the January meeting would be the strategic planning session, or not necessarily. Okay, and you can include a discussion on the plan for fundraising. But yeah, I concur with Commissioner Miller's assessment. As it stands now, this would be an activity that the commission will no longer be involved with.
Okay.
That would be my understanding also at this time. Is there any more discussion? This item is now closed for discussion. May we please move to the next item on the agenda?
Yes, item 6C is closeout report regarding 2014 Camp Rosie.
Camp Rosie?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
It's the next
Closeout report.
Chair Burns, members of the commission. This year we completed the 8th year for Camp Rosie, which is offered for young women and girls between the ages of 12 and 18 in order to empower them to make personal, educational, financial, and career choices from an expanded set of possibilities so they can achieve self-sufficiency, career satisfaction, and long-term financial security. Consistent with the core mission of the Commission, Camp Rosie, in collaboration with many other local service providers and city departments, seeks to educate and train young individuals to develop an essential business and financial literacy skills, which will ensure self-sufficiency and financial security as they grow older. Historically, the Commission has funded 2 3-week sessions of Camp Rosie each summer. This year we had 2 sessions which were scheduled and took place. The first session was June 16th through July 3rd, and it was Monday through Thursday from 12:30 to 5:30. And the second session was July 7th through July 24th, again Monday through Thursday, 12:30 to 5:30. In the first session, we had 13 applicants and 10 actual attendees, so three of the individuals who had submitted an application ended up dropping out either during the first week or weren't unable to attend. The average age for the first session was 13 years old, and we had 2 non-Glendale residents and 8 Glendale residents. Session 2, we had 28 applicants, 22 actually attended. Average age was 14 years old, and we had 3 non-Glendale residents participate in the camp. Our camp director, Agar Doge, she was new this year. Previously, last year, Christine Powers had the pleasure of teaching the camp, but we were able to hire Agar Doge this year, and she had background and had been a teacher in the LAUSD school system, and so she was very familiar with and had the background to be able to teach this camp. And I have to say that I was able to witness firsthand how she was able to break down the girls, because on the first day of camp, as I attended, all the girls were sitting and they did not want to, they looked like they didn't want to be there and they didn't want to participate, but by the end of the session, they were shedding tears, hugging hugging each other and the instructor, and we're talking about what a great experience it was and how much they had learned, and exchanging information with the other participants. The curriculum, as the camp was held at the Pacific Community Center, which is located in South Glendale, and the curriculum objectives are to increase feelings of self-esteem, self-worth, and self-sufficiency among the participants, introduce, develop, and practice essential money management and business skills, and expand and improve the girls' knowledge of fitness and nutrition. The curriculum is attached as an exhibit in the report, but what was different this year and what was added to the curriculum that was different this year were a leadership class and a class on drug and alcohol prevention courses, and those two were a suggestion from the commission, or at least one of them, and one of them was a suggestion by staff. And I think the participants really enjoyed both sessions, and there was great discussion, and they took away a lot from the curriculum. In order to be able to measure outcomes for the program, staff does have a pre and post survey that we asked the participants to take, and the outcomes were as follows. In looking at first session and in second session, when you look at financial literacy, and what staff did to analyze the outcomes were we took the survey questions and categorized them accordingly: financial literacy, future planning, self-image, health and fitness, relationships, and leadership. And if you look in the report, you'll see that 50% of the participants showed improvement in financial literacy, meaning they felt more confident in their ability to budget and their understanding of budgeting and money management. And then 47% showed improvement in the second session. Future planning, 40% showed improvement in the first session, 42% in the second session. Self-image, 60% showed improvement in the first session, 63% in the second. Health and fitness, 50% showed improvement and 58% in the second session. Relationships, you'll notice that there was no improvement in the first session, and about 5% said that they felt improvement in the second session. And I have to tell you, I was looking at the numbers, and that was because they felt confident that they knew how they were supposed to be treated in their relationship. And the question was, you expect to be treated with respect in a relationship, and they all rated 10. So in the beginning of the session, they felt that, yes, I strongly believe that I need to be respected in a relationship in the beginning of the session, and felt the same at the end of the session. So there was really no improvement, which is great. That means at least in that category, the girls felt confident. And in leadership, 60% showed improvement in the first session versus 58% in the second session. The funding for Camp Rosie this year came from 2 grants. The first one was from Sir Optimus International of Glendale for $1,000. And the second one was from Dignity Health Glendale Memorial with $10,000. And you'll notice that the staff was able to keep the expenses below $10,000, so it cost $9,556 to run Camp Rosie this year. And I think we were able to keep that low because of the fact that we weren't able to take one of the sessions. The second session wasn't able to take a field trip to Finance Park, which was part of the curriculum. And we were also able to save some money on purchasing materials for some of the activities, so we were able to stay within $10,000. Normally, the budget for Camp Rosie is anywhere between $13,000 and $15,000, and it'll vary depending on if we're able to. We as staff try to bring in, with the help of our commissioners, individuals who are able to come and teach and talk to the girls without charging. And so if we can get people to come to speak to the participants without us having to pay, then our costs are lower. And of course, we do hire the staff person who does teach Camp Rosie. That concludes my report, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Chair Burns, if I may, members of the commission, I just want to emphasize that this is an information-only report. And under the agenda in the Brown Act, it's not intended to have a substantive discussion. And again, this is one project that you probably want to visit during your strategic planning session in terms of whether, in your minds, it warrants continued financial support on the part of the Commission or not.
Thank you.
Chair Burns, I have a question. Are we allowed to ask questions? Okay. How many girls in total did we serve again?
In total, there were 10 participants in the first session and 22 in the second session, so 32 total.
32.
But we did have 13 applications and 28 applications. They just either dropped out or couldn't attend for whatever reason.
And second question, the grant that we received for 2014, the $1,000 grant for Seroptimus and the $10,000 grant for Dignity Health, is that is not expected for the 2015 year. Even if a different entity comes in, the grant specifically coming to the Commission, is it expected or unexpected?
The grant from the Dignity Health is not expected. We were not successful in securing that grant this year. We did apply in partnership with the Glendale Youth Alliance, GYA, because the terms of the application had changed and you had to be a nonprofit to be able to apply. So we were not able to secure the Dignity Health grant going forward for next year, but not sure about Seroptimus yet because that application process has not happened.
Yes.
Just clarification. I understood that the girl should be from Glendale, the applicant, but you mentioned 2 application was from.
If Commissioner Chair Burns, Commissioner Kojayan, we do give priority to Glendale residents, but if we have room in the class, then we will take non-residents as well. So because there was room in the class, we were able to accommodate the non-residents. And I don't have the list in front of me, but they could have been individuals that we added after the session had started, that they contacted us and asked us. So if there is room, we will take non-residents, but we do prioritize Glendale residents.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Miller.
This is nothing more than to have it stated so it goes to the January agenda. But for all intents and purposes, it is apparent that Camp Rosie is the signature program of this commission. So like Director Jess Duran has identified, I hope that this is a big part of the agenda that you put together with staff as we have a discussion about Camp Rosie, what it means to the commission, what our involvement might be. I also think looking at the improvement, I think there's a lot of room for growth is all I'm saying. There's a lot of room for discussion about this and a lot of room for growth about what specifically is in Camp Rosie. As you know, every year, Chair Burns, we struggle with getting attendance. We struggle with specific categories on a 60% improvement. How great is that? Sorry but I think there's, on the positive side, before I get shut down over here, on the positive side, what I'm looking for on the agenda is that we have a discussion around Camp Rosie that is really quite valuable with the input of this whole dais and what it means specifically to the community, how we best serve the community of women and girls in whatever we participate. That's all.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments? Then I'm going to go ahead and ask each commissioner for a comment if they would like. Commissioner Law.
I'm really looking forward to learning more about how you produce a program like this and to sort of see behind the scenes how you make the sausage, basically. I'm interested in learning more about it and excited about it.
Talking about
Camp Rosie, and if you're saying it's a signature program, I've read a little bit about it, but that's not the same as really getting down to.
I'm sure that we would. Yes, sir.
Chair Burns, when you asked for comments from your fellow commissioners, were you referring to the agenda item 7 or as it relates to Camp Rosie?
No, I was referring to agenda number 7.
Okay.
Wrapping up.
If I may read that into the record.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and read that into the record. Item 7 is Commissioner staff comments.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask for a staff or commission comments first, please. Commissioner Law?
That was my comment.
When I came back, first of all, 2 months and 2 days I was out of country. So when I came back, my first visit was September 9, Maple Park grand opening. It was very nice, and that the park has many changes, and that will be good for the community at that area. I like to mention that in October 23rd, I guess everybody knows that there is going to be Walk Against Domestic Violence, DATEV outreach every year. Last year I participated, but this year is going to be October 23rd. They will start from St. Peter Church towards Glen Oaks. If anybody interested, or this is for just walk, it says Against Domestic Violence. This is their annual walk. On Sunday, October 26, Armenian Relief Society, they are going to have a luncheon in Brandview Collection. For the proceeds of this luncheon is going to go towards needy families, homeless, and especially domestic violence. And if anybody interested, this is on October 26th, Sunday, from 11 to 4. And there is a lot women and families coming to Armenian Center asking for help or shelter. I know there is YWCA, but the board, the executive board, they're trying to help them, shelter them in motels or hotels until they find them a good. So this annual luncheon is going to be the proceed for that cause. And then on December 20th is going to be Christmas festival. Also the proceed of this going to the same cause, and it's going to be on the Civic Auditorium December 20th, and I'm the chair. I encourage everybody to attend that, because all of this money we are trying to help women against domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair Miller.
Well, I just want to again congratulate Chair Burns on becoming our chair, and I also want to welcome Commissioner Law. I think you are going to add some really interesting and deep layers into this commission, especially as we shift towards policy. I was wondering as we looked towards our January meeting, I will tell you this, I'm not going to run through all the events I went to, because I sort of feel like with our break, I was telling Chair Burns this, that it's almost like we went to summer camp. You know what I'm saying? We've been away from each other. It was like summer camp. I had a great summer camp, by the way. But it's good to be back to the work of the full commission and the good work of the commission. So that is very meaningful, and especially to be back together during a month that focuses on some really key women's issues like domestic violence, like breast cancer awareness. And so as we go forth this particular month, if we could all just keep those things pretty front and center for all people who suffer from either of those. I was wondering if staff could look in relation to policy, specifically for our own dialogue, 3 areas that really seem of interest from what I've heard is domestic violence. There's also some very specific and interesting legislation that really addresses rape and rape within the college campuses and rape shield laws and things like that. Also, if we could identify AB 109 and really talk about the reentry of some of the incarcerated back into our communities and what it's meant to women and children, that would be greatly appreciated. And then I do want to wish student ex officio Rima Sahakian just a great college experience, my college experience. I also went to an all-women's college, Commissioner Law, so I know what that experience was. I went to the University of St. Catherine, and I know what that focus was, but I want to wish you a great college experience. It's some of the best years of your life, and I might even come and visit you in Irvine and take you out to lunch.
Definitely.
And wish you all the best in your career, and I'm happy to be here as well. Last but not least, because I again am so thankful to be able to serve and to be a public servant in this capacity, and I want to thank specifically Council Member Dave Weaver for appointing me to this commission, as well as being a very big supporter of how this reorganization might look. I also want to thank Mayor Sinanian. Both of those men specifically were very open, were very honest, were very engaging, and were very interested in where this commission was going, and I'm very grateful and thankful for all the time that they picked up the phone and called me. Last but not least, if I may just go off edge, and this will be the last piece, I want you to know I had one of those experiences again where you realize how fast life is and how quickly it goes by. I want to wish on television, because they're North Glendale people, my niece, Lindsay Myers, got married to Ricky Weber this weekend. We refer in our family as Weber's Got Wed, and I want to thank them because they're pretty popular up there in North Glendale and all our friends, and to just really wish them a lifetime of happiness and to acknowledge how fast life goes by. You have 2 young daughters. I came home from college and she was my playmate, and this weekend she was getting married. So enjoy every moment, love them every moment, and let's keep what's first and foremost present and important. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So being my last meeting, I would like to thank everyone on the commission for this experience. I can't explain like what an honor it's been to serve as one of the 2. I know I speak for myself and Ava when I say that it's been a very productive year. It's been a very great learning experience. Through the commission, I've learned so much that I'll be able to apply in my personal life and, of course, my professional life, leadership skills, of course, as I tackle political science at Irvine. I would like to thank staff, past and present and future, of course, who day in and day out, put in so much work to make all of our meetings run smoothly and all of our events. Also, I would like to congratulate Commissioner Lal for joining us. Although I won't be here, I know that all of you will do some great work, and I look forward to meeting the new student commissioners as well. Congratulations to Chair Burns and Vice Chair Miller. I look forward to seeing your leadership on this commission, and I want to end with one of my favorite quotes. It goes, in life's winter, find your invincible summer. And I know that the commission is going through a lot of changes, but for sure you will find the invincible summer that we're looking for. So congratulations to all. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Going to read that now or later?
Yes, if you would like.
Yes, well, I was going to ask you to go ahead and do that, and then I'll ask for staff comments.
Okay. So, thought for today. I know the world is filled with troubles and many injustices, but reality is as beautiful as it is ugly. I think it is just as important to sing about beautiful mornings as it is to talk about slums. I just couldn't write anything without hope in it. Oscar Hammerstein II.
Staff, are there any comments? Yes? No? Well, I just have a few. What time is it? 10 to 8. That's terrific. 5 months of... That's pretty good. I think almost 5 months have gone by. So many events have occurred, and at the top of my list was a luncheon held by Senator Carol Liu. The name of the luncheon was Celebrating Today's Woman, and the keynote speaker was Dixie Noonan. And I had handed out to each one of the commissioners the top 18 issues challenging women today. And I don't think we have to reinvent any one of them. I thought perhaps if we spent a bit of time at home going over these 4 pages, giving them consideration, when we came back together again, you're going to see things like number 3, violence against women. Number 5, inadequate maternal and infant health care. There's any number, 18 of them actually, issues that challenge women. So I think that we really can benefit by reading these issues while we're at home. A 17-year-old girl won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's phenomenal. And I also want to congratulate Denise Miller and Sedeka Joyan. Two ladies were honored by Business Life. They became women achievers, and it was really, really exciting to see the two of you walking up to receive your honors. Congratulations. Now, let's go on down here to save the dates. October the 15th, the Fireman's Luncheon at the Hilton. Most everyone knows about it, and I'm sure they have a sellout. October 23rd, the Glendale Youth Association, is that right? GYA? Oh, I'm sorry. Glendale Youth Alliance is going to roast Scott Ochoa. That should be extremely fun. Looking forward to that. And November 13th, the YWCA is having, honoring a women vet lunch. And I want to close the meeting in memory of Jack Kabatek, who was a really dear man, and Mrs. Ruth Charles. We lost both Jack and Ruth while we were on vacation. Oh no, summer camp. While we were on summer camp, we lost Jack and Ruth. The next meeting that we know about is January 12th, so we won't be together again to wish Merry Christmas, Thanksgiving. What else are we going to miss by not meeting?
Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. All of those things we will sort of just be. You think maybe we should have a party and not talk about anything but fun things?
Just stand on opposite ends of the room.
Oh, that would work. That would work. Anyway, I would like to thank you all for all your thoughts. And it's now about 5 minutes to 8, and we're now adjourned.